Alright, so my cat has decided to ram her head into my microphone, which is very cool of her. So we're gonna do a little recording this morning. We're gonna talk about Gnome because Gnome sucks. And the reason Gnome sucks is because they claim to be very accessibility focused, but they seem to like to strip out features that people might need for accessibility reasons. And one of the reasons I was looking at GNOME was because people always say, oh, it's touch centric, it's touch centric, and I have not found this to be the case. It is not very touch friendly. And the reason for this is like, okay, so if you're gonna have a touch friendly desktop, one of the worst things you can do is you lock everybody to use freaking like the title bars for everything, because that's just a pain in. Goddamn cat. My cat is playing with my microphone right now. She's gonna talk to you a bit. But anyways, yeah. So GNOME likes to have you manipulate windows with a very small title bar. And the problem with that obviously is it makes it difficult for people to maneuver or like to manipulate windows without a mouse. You know what I mean? And that's not cool. I mean, like, so what you do on KDE if you're using it touch centric is you have like icons in the status bar for stuff like minimize, maximize, close because they're bigger buttons. They don't they aren't like randomly spread out on your desktop depending on where your window is, and it makes it easier to manipulate windows. So when I say GNOME is accessibility focused, I think this is kind of bullshit because their magnifier was ported from GNOME 3 and KDE had to like completely rewrite their magnifier for people that have like poor eyesight. And some guy named Richie ended up doing that. He's a blind developer, and he said, "Oh, well, I'll fix your magnifier." And then KDE ended up uh, merging it into their desktop. GNOME, meanwhile, is using like some ancient magnifier, and it sucks. It's like horrible for people that are blind. But of course, the people I'm dealing with right now have cerebral palsy, and so because they're mostly paralyzed, we found that touchscreens are very useful for, and I've made a video on this obviously with that interview with Mariah, and we use a touchscreen for it because it's easier to use a touchscreen than like maneuver a mouse or a keyboard if you don't have fine motor control. And GNOME really doesn't seem to help much with that because you can't just like use a normal file manager. So stuff like moving files between file managers and stuff, you either have to use keyboard commands or you have to. There's a way to do like double pane in KDE, and that's where you have like two file managers sitting next to each other, and that's always cool. That's a good way to do it. But GNOME used to have that, or at least I think they used to have it, and they got rid of it, or somebody had asked for it and they rejected it because the person that asked for it wasn't disabled. So it's like, you know, you want to be accessibility focused, but you asked what the use case is for every little thing that people need, you know. And when I was talking to the Cosmic developers, they asked me what I needed, and I said, "Look, everything has pretty much already been done by KDE. You really just have to port all their work to get it to work on Cosmic, but a lot of it's going to revolve around the taskbar because the taskbar is a lot easier to manipulate for people that have, that don't have the fine motor control required to manipulate windows." And they seem interested. I don't know exactly when all of that's coming, but they do have a list of everything that I've said that we need. And GNOME has just been a huge pain in my side. I don't even bother interacting with them because, like, what am I supposed to tell them? They're gonna ask me what my fucking use case is for everything, and I'm gonna be like, it's for people with disabilities. And I don't want to get into that argument. I don't want to have to fight these people for every little freaking change that I need. And so, it's whatever. But like, how can you call yourselves accessibility friendly when your whole goal is to strip out every little feature? You know, stuff that people may depend on for their use case, and that's kind of that is why I really can't recommend Gnome. The only reason I have Mariah using it right now is because she needs an OSK, a good on-screen keyboard with a full keyboard layout, and there's a Gnome extension called GJK OSK, and that is like the only usable keyboard right now. So I've like begged and pleaded with System 76 to please make sure their keyboard has like modifiers and it's like fully functional as a laptop keyboard, you know? Or like as a full like you can operate a terminal with this keyboard basically. And they actually did ask what is my use case for that. And I said, well, it's for people that can't use a physical keyboard, or if they can, like they can only do it barely. And that was so they said they were going to try to add modifiers to it. I don't know if that'll be enough, honestly, because I don't really use a on-screen keyboard myself. But I know that Malite from KDE is really a port of their KDE mobile keyboard because it's meant to be used on like a cell phone. But I mean, you need to use a full keyboard if you're going to manipulate a terminal on a phone, so I don't know why they don't have a app for that. Even Android has an app for this. Like Android has so much shit, and I'm like, well, why can't you just use an Android computer for all this stuff? And the problem is Termux, because Termux is very limited in what it can do, surprisingly. And it makes it difficult to use you really need like a full Linux tablet if you're going to do like servers and stuff. You know, you can't be using Termux for all this. I do know running Linux stuff like Java, Minecraft, and all that. So, but like, what are you supposed to do? You know, you need the accessibility options of Android, which is like light years ahead of Linux, which is ironic because Android, everybody says it's Linux, but the applications written for Android do not run on Linux. And Waydroid only gets you so far because you can't do like system integration and in Waydroid you can't like replace your keyboard with a Waydroid keyboard. I mean, like, how are you gonna do that? So, anyways, I wanted to go to this quote from Linus Torvalds because this is something I had read, and this is from a while back, but the sentiment gets stronger with every passing year. So like this really aged like wine, you know. And it says, I personally just encourage people to switch to KDE. The users are idiots and confused by the functionality. Mentality of GNOME is a disease. If you think your users are idiots, only idiots will use it. I don't use GNOME because in striving to be simple, it has long since reached the point where it simply doesn't do what I need it to do. Please just tell people to use KDE. And that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, again, the only reason she's using GNOME is the freaking on-screen keyboard. And once Cosmic comes out with their keyboard, hopefully it'll work on whatever you decide to use it on. Obviously, it'll be a Wayland keyboard, which is kind of the main problem. Is nobody's developed a good Wayland keyboard yet, except on GNOME. So hopefully the System 76 keyboard, because like I'm like, look, if you do anything, just make an on-screen keyboard. I don't need the whole desktop environment. I can use KDE. It's fine, but I do need that keyboard. And so I mean, like, because the GNOME keyboard doesn't really work on KDE. It's like a pain in the ass to use, and it's like it's buggy on a good day. It's it's not really usable if you don't use GNOME, and even then, it's got some issues with like resizing windows and stuff, where stuff gets stuck behind it, and it makes it hard to use. But Wayland itself has been kind of a nightmare for that because in striving to be more secure, what is done is it is like restricted accessibility options severely. And so I asked Mariah, I said, why can't you just use X11? And she said it's somehow worse than Wayland right now. Like, trying to use accessibility options on X11 is actually significantly worse than using them on Wayland. Stuff is even more buggy. And that stuff probably will never get fixed. So you gotta kind of migrate. But she also uses Waydroid for stuff because, I mean, obviously, Android has a lot of good applications, you know, that Linux just doesn't have. So that's kind of where we're at, you know. It's GNOME has just been GNOME has just been like such a huge pain, and I don't think it's gonna get better. It's just gonna get worse. So, you know. All right, thanks.